Welcome to AI Now with Oracle, a new series where we explore the world of enterprise artificial intelligence and its impact on the world of work. I'm Miranda Nash, head of Oracle's Applied AI office, and in each episode, I'll dive deep into the latest trends, breakthroughs, and considerations surrounding AI technology. So whether you're an AI enthusiast, a business leader, or just curious about the future, this series is for you. This week, I'm welcoming Monifa Porter from Mach49 to discuss bringing innovation, growth, and AI to large enterprises. Before we dive in, just some quick housekeeping notes. Feel free to use whatever platform you're tuning in on to ask all your burning AI questions or provide your own insights and expertise. We'll do our best to respond to as many of your questions as possible, and who knows, maybe your questions or comments will inspire one of our next episodes. Okay. Let's get into it. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Monifa Porter. Monifa, so good to see you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Miranda.
Now, I'm familiar with Mach49. We've talked quite a bit about your growth initiatives, but please share with the folks here, what is Mach49 and what do you do there?
Sure. Mach49 drives meaningful growth for the Global 1000 across 4 pillars of corporate venturing: venture building, buying, partnering, and investing. And really taking an approach that helps our customers understand the key pains that their customers have, and then bring those solutions to bear for those customers. So it's really about driving growth on all fronts.
Yeah, and that was really appealing to me because we have large overlap in our customer base here with Oracle and Mach49. Why do your customers go with Mach49? I mean, I know they want growth, they're seeking innovation, but tell us more about what that looks like and maybe a couple of those stories as well would be good to hear.
Sure. Mach49, we're a group of operators. So they come to us because we get things done. And what I mean by that is you can go to strategy consultants and get a really great PowerPoint deck that describes what one could do. You can go to user research groups that can help you understand what your customers are saying. What we do is take those customer insights, take that key strategy, and then build plans and execute against those plans with our customers to actually deliver the growth outputs that they're looking for. And so what that means is we drive experiments with our customer base and help them sort of iterate toward product market fit for a new venture or iterate toward a new solution internally if they're trying to drive an internal process.
This iteration is so key for AI, for all types of growth, venture orientation, right? It'd be great to hear more about some of those customer experiences with iteration. How have they improved at innovation?
Okay, sure. Let me tell you about Schneider Electric, for example. We've run several programs with Schneider Electric, and one of them I led was an incubate with a team that was looking at how do you open renewable energy opportunities in unregulated energy markets. So they have a very specific challenge frame that they were going after. And what we did was we took the team through a fairly structured process, a series of experiments. So first, open-ended discovery. Let's go and find out who matters most, and what matters most to them. So who are your most important stakeholders and what are their key pains, aspirations, unmet needs, while trying to answer this question of how do we bring renewables into this market. And then we went from that open-ended discovery, we understand those key pain points. Then it's, okay, well, what value propositions resonate and solve those key pains? And the way that this is an experiment or a test is you're running hundreds of customer interviews to answer a series of questions. So the open-ended discovery piece, you're on the phone talking to your stakeholders and learning from them what those pains are. But you go into each one of those conversations with a hypothesis. We believe the pain is this, and you go and explore that and either validate or invalidate that. And you let the answers that are coming out of those conversations guide you to your next hypothesis and the next and the next.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, when I was an entrepreneur, it was all about iteration as well. And so what you're doing is bringing that type of iterate and learn thinking into these big companies, which is also the foundation for AI.
Yes.
Right? That's why I think this is so interesting. So, okay, without sharing your secret sauce, when you go into one of these companies, can you share more about, so you've talked about the experiments you start with and understanding the customers. What else do you do with one of these engagements?
Sure. So open-ended discovery, value props, what sort of solution or offering or benefit will solve those pains. And then we run more tests. So we then do paper prototypes and storyboards and concept cards to really put solutions in front of people in a very low fidelity way. I think hand-drawn sketches of solutions and very short taglines that describe a benefit, and you're giving people the room to respond to you. Mm-hmm. So you don't put a high fidelity sort of landing page in front of somebody with a lot of detail. You're showing them stick figures.
Sure.
And that gives people permission to tell you that your baby is ugly. They can tell you that your idea is not good, mm-hmm. and then help you build a better solution that will actually meet their needs. And then once you have a key understanding of the pains, the value props, and the solutions that resonate, then you can do the easy part, which is the competitive analysis, TAM, SAM, the operating plan, the sort of the business stuff, right? That gets you to a clear pitch and a clear venture that this company will then go and build.
Now, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned something that sounded really interesting to me, which was synthetic personas. What does that mean? And how do you use that? Is it AI relevant?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So synthetic personas and synthetic data in general are key to how we run our business. And this also gets to sort of AI mindset. So I'll tell you a little story about how Mach49 came to disrupt ourselves with AI, mm-hmm. And how that led to us creating synthetic personas, which then are the fuel to the process that I just described. Mm. So March of 2023, right? Mm-hmm. What is time in this era of post-COVID? It's hard to know. But you'll remember ChatGPT was everywhere. Yeah. Everyone's talking about Gen mm-hmm. AI. We're all looking around asking ourselves, okay, what does this mean for our business? And at that time, I had a product roadmap where I was tasked with building a bunch of tools for venture builders. So tools to help facilitate that process that I just described. Mm-hmm. And I looked at my roadmap and I looked at ChatGPT and I said, okay, there's something here. We need to go and find out what ChatGPT can do for us. So I took a small team of 4 people, 2-week sprint, mm-hmm. and we set out to find out what could Gen AI do in the context of our business. Mm-hmm. And we built a prototype, we ran some tests, we stood up so we connected together some APIs and realized, oh, wow, we can really drive customer insights quickly with these tools. Yeah. And one of the things that we learned very quickly was we could use prompt engineering to derive insights from specific customers in a way that was aligned with what we were hearing with humans. Yeah. So in that first 2 weeks, we got a little bit of a signal of that, and then we spent a couple of quarters really building that out.
Building that out is fundamental to your process.
Yeah.
Because obviously you've been doing growth and innovation before generative AIs, but now you can just accelerate the process and use these new tools.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And the key understanding here is if you take your own subject matter expertise, our subject matter expertise is in driving customer insights and understanding customer pain by talking to stakeholders, mm-hmm. and then applying that to building a business. That's what we do. We do it all day long. If you take your key expertise and partner with AI to deepen whatever it is you're doing, so mm-hmm. you sort of couple the two together, then you can do things faster, sure. You can do things, more importantly, deeper. So you can go more broad. So with our synthetics, what we're able to do is I described, we used hundreds and hundreds of customer interviews. We're actually able to arrive at our human interviews with really well fleshed out, hypothesized pains because we use the synthetics first. Mm-hmm. So we come to humans with a deeper understanding because we use the synthetics, and then we're able to get much further down the path.
Interesting.
One
thing we've noticed with our customers is those who are willing to kind of put in the work and learn to iterate, learn to adopt change and innovation and growth really are the ones who are accelerating and at the front of things, right? Yep. So I'm wondering if you see that, do you see some crossover benefits? Like you're maybe building a new business in one part of the company, do you see crossover benefits throughout the enterprise?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I was just describing something that's core to one part of our company. But what happens is, as we begin to build these tools and engender an AI mindset across the company, people are able to use AI for entirely different things. So what happens is you begin to develop a mindset, you begin to develop the muscle, and you begin to understand what AI is good for and what it's not good for, right? So Ethan Mollick talks about the jagged frontier, the idea that you have to explore where those lines of useful and not useful are. And you do that by using the tools. And the tools are changing constantly, but by learning to engage with AI, you really can sharpen like, okay, this is very, very useful for the kind of creative and insight-driven work that we do, where a hallucination can also be viewed as creativity if you can kind of control the nature of those hallucinations, and it's actually quite useful. And then there's a whole other kind of work that's fact-based that you need to set up a different kind of AI flow with retrieval augmented generation and ontologies and other things that allow you to really stick to the facts.
Absolutely.
But that in order to learn that, you've got to get in the water. You've got to begin
in the water. I love that.
To
the hallucination can be a feature or bug depending on the situation.
Exactly. If you're asking a question like, how might we? And we do that all the time. How might we solve for renewable energy in unregulated markets? Hallucinations are features. It's creativity.
So you talked there about regulated industries, regulated markets, and every customer is different. Every client you work with is different. But how do you solve kind of novel business problems going into a company that's not familiar with using AI in every part of their business, perhaps?
That's a great question, Miranda. So let me tell you about a story. This just happened 2 weeks ago. So the engagement was around helping a company run an innovation conference. So this company, they were bringing in a couple of thousand people to be in a conference setting and also online.
Internal folks?
It's a combination of internal people, internal to the company, industry people who are doing the same type of work, vendors, and other stakeholders, regulators, academics, a wide variety of their ecosystem, or either in the room at the conference center or they're participating in the event online. And our task was they're delivering their strategic report and their vision for the future. So they wanted to communicate out to these stakeholders, but they also really wanted to learn from them. They wanted to learn how each individual stakeholder could participate in helping create this future. So what we did, I described a little earlier, our sort of CD or customer development process of interviewing people. We said, how do we turn this into a two-way conversation? So we had subject matter experts presenting content, but also asking questions of the audience. And then the audience would answer those qualitative questions using their phone or typing if they're watching online. And in real time, we synthesized all those answers and presented them back during that same breakout session. So what that allowed this company to do was listen to thousands of people and collect feedback from thousands of people about how to implement their strategic vision in short 45-minute sessions. So in real time. And we leveraged AI to do that. So we created a synthetic conference first. So we understood who was going to be there. We asked our synthetic attendees all of the questions. And then we used those synthetic responses to really craft and hone our prompt engineering methods. And then, in real time, we were able to run the conference and get real responses and do the prompt engineering on the fly.
What a story for productivity, for better customer insight. I mean, is this a company that was already adept at AI, or are you really...
They weren't adept at that part of AI. They use a lot of AI and machine learning in their business, but this particular engagement, that this was new for them, and I think, and it was new for us too. Like we were able to think about our own expertise, couple it with the art of the possible, and then deliver a solution that worked for our clients because we know what's possible with AI, and we were able to pull that together pretty quickly.
Look, when we talk to customers, they seem to kind of sometimes get stumbled up, right? Everybody knows about AI. They want to innovate. They want to grow, use the new technology. But where do you start? And sometimes you can end up tripping over themselves.
Yeah.
What's your, what have you experienced? What do you try to tell customers?
Sure.
Where to start?
I'll tell customers the same thing that I tell my sisters, which is just get started.
Okay.
So take some task, some personal task or work task, and start talking, whether you use Claude or ChatGPT or one of your tools, any sort of conversational UI. If you begin to have a conversation and you don't treat it like a search in your web browser where you sort of one and done, you have to have the conversation, you can begin to hone your understanding of what the AI is capable of helping you with. And you might even ask the AI, how do I get this done?
Yeah.
And if you use some small thing, very small, like planning for your kid's college tour or something like that, and you just begin that conversation, it's like doing push-ups, Miranda. Like you can't get to doing 100 push-ups in a day if you don't do one push-up.
So true. Yes. And this is absolutely what we see as well, adopting AI features that are just built into the existing
Exactly.
of the business.
Exactly.
That's kind of where we typically start. Yes, experiment in your personal life, no doubt. And also bring it into the apps you already know, reduce the requirement for change management, and then customers get comfortable and it just accelerates from there.
Exactly. And there's a lot of emotion in this. There's a lot of fear with AI where people are worried that AI is going to replace them. And what I say is AI it's your cognitive exoskeleton. It's a way to augment your superpowers. And the sort of sooner you begin to use the tools that are embedded in your workflows, the more skilled you'll become, and you'll be able to project your own expertise much further. You're able to actually do more with what you know. And it's critically important in any work environment to know how to make yourself better, but also how to do your job better. And the tools are embedded. So
such an opportunity, every one of us, to do our jobs better, right?
Yeah.
Every day. I love that. You mentioned how, you kind of tore up your roadmap when in 2023. And I'm wondering if you could share more, because, we're looking a lot at agents and the opportunity for agents to really, with autonomy, to be able to take on work for each of us and make that 24/7 happening all the time, right? And really accelerate all of our ability to do work. What does that look like for Mach49?
Yeah. So that sort of pivotal moment in 2023, that was really about Mach49 sort of, eating your own dog food. We tell our clients, you've got to experiment, you've got to disrupt your core, you've got to become the unicorn. You can't let the startups, the small upstarts come and eat your lunch. We're talking to big companies. So we took our own advice and said, okay, how do we experiment? How do we disrupt ourselves before we get disrupted? And it's an act of courage, right? Like you got to jump in that water. And so there's a bit of a leap there. But I do believe the thing that we just described, where you begin to use the tools that are embedded in your workflows and you learn at that edge, it's much easier to understand what kinds of things are possible when you sort of look at your core business.
So one thing we notice is that some companies are ready to experiment and dive into the water, right? And some aren't. And I'm wondering what common threads do you see? What do you think really makes that difference?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think what's really important here, it's not about what industry or vertical a company is in. It's about their appetite for growth and their appetite for changing mindsets. So we see there's a deep alignment with a growth mindset and an AI mindset, and it's sort of fueled by curiosity and this willingness to experiment and iterate. And what we found is, as we're working with our partners and clients, a sort of key thing that happens over the course of our engagements is people sort of get realigned with their curiosity and their creativity. And when the same thing happens when people are working with AI, because surprising insights emerge, and you ask the next question about that insight, and you can use these tools in new and different ways, and really explore the landscape with some depth, that the sort of net result of that is people are closer to their customers, and they're aligned with their own curiosity.
It's almost like that growth mindset that we're trying to teach our children is the AI mindset that we want to teach our companies and infuse into their culture.
That's exactly it. And it's great because the technology's changed so quickly. You have to maintain this growth mindset. You have to keep moving as the technology changes.
Before we go, let me ask you one question about how are you using AI, outside of work? What are you excited about right now?
Actually, the thing that I'm most excited about, I'm reading and listening to more than actually using. Mech-interp, which is the idea of understanding the deep structure of LLMs. So I was just listening to a fantastic podcast with a guy from Anthropic who was describing effectively the neuroanatomy of LLMs and understanding at a feature and circuit and sort of tiny little level what these LLMs are doing. And it's fascinating. It has zero business implication that I can discern for me right now, but the neuroscience minor, that I was a neuroscience minor as an undergrad, that person in me is just fascinated by this stuff.
I love that. I agree. This gives us an excuse to kind of geek out on, attention is all you need or whatever it is. So thank you so much, Monifa.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in, and a big thank you to today's guest, Monifa Porter. And if you want more updates, musings, and AI news, make sure to subscribe to Oracle's YouTube channel and follow us on social media. See you next time.